All right, my babies. I am back. I have cleaned my neck a bit. And now, today, this video, or whatever now, in your existence, you have two games to play. This, this, I'm having one of those moments where you realize, like, you think of something or you write down a note, and like everything beyond that shifted, whether you are aware of it or not. In your existence, you have two games to play, the one of life and the one with life. I would actually go for 3 games now. And again, because I always said, I always keep saying that you're never playing the game of life, you're playing a game with life. Ultimately, we choose a game, but it's played differently on each side. So, I'm playing the game of life, I'm playing the game with life. And the third one, which is not the best one, is that you're playing somebody else's game. Right? And I want you to consider what careers look like. I want you to consider what elements of your day are basically elements that you created or elements that were created before and you're just kind of like working around them. And so like, this kind of felt like weaseling. But imagine you wake up, you take your kids to school, if you have kids, or you go to school, or you go to work, right? All of these are patterns within normal systems. Who built these systems? Well, at one point, society kind of like evolved in a way that also allowed them to be built. And as basically like human beings kind of like developed, they kept developing in that direction, or in directions, in specific directions. And the focus I want you to have is the split between you kind of like finding your place in a game that you're playing, or finding your place in a career, or finding your place in a daily pattern that gives you enough value to survive, right? Like, what's the difference between the people that kind of like wake up in the morning and go to work and drive and then drink coffee and have lunch at 1 o'clock and then come back to their family at 5 or whatever, and the people living basically like in some jungle, and they kind of like wake up every morning, they kind of like heat the fire, have something to drink around the fire, go hunt, come back, right? Like whatever. All of these. Look, what's the difference? Well, to a point, nothing, because ultimately all of us are kind of like figuring out how to survive from day to day. And that figuring out happens in different tiers, and for me, I'm trying to split that, because what we're doing is we're working with what is it your version of the world that you're looking at and you're kind of like developing, right? Are you world building? Are your steps daily creating changing how the world looks like, right? Because a lot of people support what others have done. Like if I am working in a bank, for example, I'm supporting the bank, and the guy who created the bank is basically somebody who changed the way the world looks like because of that bank being in it and people using it and we're building around it, correct? So he's playing a game of life by building a bank, while others are basically playing a game with him or with basically whatever he created. So they're not playing even the game of life, they're kind of like just playing his game and trying to live. And why is he playing a game of life, not with life? Because he opened a bank, man. He did not open a new financial structure that changes how people do banking. Because that is away from something that already exists. Something that already exists has preset rules, has people that thought about it before, have people that kind of like, done the same thing or just explored a certain kind of thing in a certain kind of way and then decided this works, and other people were like, oh, that works, so I'm going to replicate it, so, right? They still impact change in society or in the world. They're just not really doing something creatively different or creatively like, they're not challenging the way life is lived. So I'm a believer that we are life, we're not alive. Because at one point something came out of consciousness or came into this world and it came out of this world. That's the thing, right? Because like a tree is not born from its roots. It doesn't absorb its nutrients from its roots. It absorbs carbon. It does absorb nutrients. It does not. Nutrients don't make it grow. Nutrients give it energy to grow, but its growth, its size, its physical shape is based on the carbon it absorbs from the atmosphere. So it doesn't grow. It doesn't come into this world. It comes out of it. The same way we do. We come out of our mother's womb. Right? Like, once we enter this world, we're not really entering it. We're coming out of it. It's kind of like this world incubates. And so life over the past millions and millions of years has kind of like been connected. It's the same thing. Like, all of us have life in us. What the fuck does that mean? I don't know. It's like my favorite thing of this year is probably like when you breathe, if you stop breathing, you lose consciousness, which means you're not breathing in air, you're breathing in consciousness. So what do you breathe out in return? Because like when you're breathing in unconsciousness, you're breathing out life. You're putting out whatever you do, whatever you touch, you're giving it life. Whatever you're working on is kind of taking a certain shape. That's basically life. Some things get moving, right? If you look at organizations that are around for 100 years, like how the fuck have they been around for 100 years? Because the system was created around certain things, and then people kind of like fill in the gaps of the system and then kind of like proceed and fuck off, and it's just fucking beautiful. So the first person is playing somebody else's game. The third person is playing a game of life by kind of like looking at what already life has around it and what already life is exploring. And what they do is they kind of like build within that realm, like build within that sandbox, right? It's still a sandbox. Like you're building a bank, it's a new bank, and you have to do things in order for you to succeed, to compete. It's like e-commerce, right? Like how can I sell products, or how can I, but it's not really art. Because art, anyway it comes out, it's super fucking unique, right? Anyway, somebody kind of like creates a painting, even if he tries to paint the same thing, unless his focus is to replicate it, it's no longer creation. Creation is a game of life, right? Replicating is a game where creation is a game with life. Replicating is a game of life. Okay? And people that just enjoy art, are they really playing the game of art? Are they playing a game? They're just playing the game of, I guess, small. The art sector, the art segment, the art economy. I don't know how to explain that. I think it'll be a good exercise for me to understand, because like yeah, it's genuinely like what I'm looking at right now is the fact that like you go into a house and you have people have paintings. Like they understand that paintings fill the space, but there's not extra thought in those paintings. There's not an extra understanding or extra depth of why I chose this painting. Like I chose this painting because it fills this place, not because it kind of like influences me, right? That's probably more of a game of life instead of like you need paintings here so that the wall doesn't look so empty. Like this painting behind me, for example, you see this? Apparently a 7-year-old painted it, and I saw it and I was like, okay, I'll buy it for $5. I'll be the first sale of the dude. And I had him sign it, right? So like that's basically how, I don't know, I fucking did that. And yeah, super fun. Anyways, in your existence you have 2 games to play. We established there are 3, because there's a game with life and there's a game of life. The game with life is where you kind of like create a new world for others to play with, right? And you're creating a new world within life. So like life kind of like gets others to play in that game. And that's basically kind of like you playing the game with life on your side, kind of like it's that back and forth. It's like, oh, I want this and I want that, and if we do this, and then suddenly gaps kind of get created, and you fill them with the new system that you're playing, and then eventually people are just kind of like all over the place wanting to play with your game. That's entrepreneurship. That's a startup. That's creating a new painting. Like at first you're kind of like following strokes, and then suddenly you're like, oh, okay, a face, oh, okay, a mountain, oh, okay, the screen, right? And there's the difference between like just having something in your head and putting it out versus looking at a landscape and painting it, right? And ultimately the person who looks at your work and goes like, yeah, I would do it. But so you have the game of life and you have the game with life. And I guess playing a game within life is the third one, maybe. Playing a game of life, you're playing a game with life, and you're playing a game within life. Playing a game within life is somebody else's game. That'll be interesting. And, I mean, at every angle, you're playing differently. You're playing a different game. And if you think about it, you start working at a bank, you're playing somebody else's game. You're playing a game within life. Then as you level up, basically, you're playing a game, you're playing the game of life, as in you're playing the game of like whatever that game that life gave you, which is basically finance/banking. And kind of when you reach a certain point, you go like, okay, mofos, what I'm going to be doing right now is I'm going to be shifting the financial scene, or like building a new kind of like bank or something. I'm using bank as an example because they're ancient. And by doing that, basically, like you kind of like elevate into the game that you're playing with life, where you go like, hey man, all right, let's open a new market. Let's do this differently. Let's all of that. Intense. We fucking love it. I love you guys. Yay.